So when I was like 9, I heard the ice cream man coming. I was really excited because I was a fat kid. So I heard the ice cream machine or truck coming down the street. You know, the thing went.
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to my video.
Okay.
That's Miss Hart. It's okay. So I was outside and I was playing, and I heard that, you know, doo 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 doo. It wasn't ice cream; it was Italian ice. But I heard him coming. I got excited. It was chubby, and so I didn't have any money, so I had to go ask my mom for money. And so I ran into the house and I said, "Mom, ice cream man." Ice cream man. So my mom was like, "Okay, here's $10. You go. I want, but you gotta get me something. I want cherry Italian ice, and you go talk to your father to get whatever your father wants, and you get whatever he wants. Go ahead, go have the money." I was like, "Yes." So I took the money and I ran. Dad, ice cream man's coming. What do you want? Dad's like, I'll have rainbow, kiddo. That sounds good. And so I was like, yeah, sweet. Okay, rainbow, cherry. I'm gonna get grape because grape's favorite. So I hopped in on my bicycle because I had a bike and I was like 9 years old. I didn't have a car, so I'm on my bicycle. And the way that my development is set up is there's like, here's my street that I lived on, and there's like 5 other streets that go this way. And so I didn't know which street the ice cream man was on. And so I had to ride my bike and pass all of these. So it's almost like I'm riding as fast as I can, trying to find the ice cream man, and then slow down and take a look down the street. Ride, slow down. And the ice cream man was all the way down the last street. So I see him, and I saw him start to drive away, and I'm like, oh crap. So I had to speed up. Ice cream man, come back, ice cream man. I don't know why you do this. That's not how you ride a bike. Come back, ice cream man. And so I caught up, and you gotta imagine that the ice cream man is like driving his car and looking in his rearview mirror. He sees me, and he's like, "Oh yeah, ride your bike, fatty. Come get that ice cream." And so I catch up. So I'm like, "Okay, I need rainbow for my dad. I need cherry for mom. I'm gonna get grape because it's favorite." And so he's like, "Okay." So I put the $10 down. Here comes the Italian ice. I'm like, "Yes, I love Italian ice." So I grab my dad's, and I grab my mom's, and then there's mine. I go. And I somehow managed to get all 3 Italian ices in my hand, but then I forgot that I just rode my bike all the way to the other side of the development. So I managed to somehow prop the bicycle up, sit on the seat, and put my hands with the Italian ices like this, and started riding my bike back home. I was like, yeah, check me out. Look at this. And I got to the street, and then I remembered that I had to turn. I was like, oh crap, so I swung it wide. And I turned, and I made it, and I was so confident. Oh, I was so pumped up. Here I go. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to have Italian ice. I'm so excited. Mom's going to have her Italian ice, and Dad's going to have rainbow. I'm going to have grape because it's favorite. I forgot that there was a speed bump in front of my house. And I hit the speed bump, and my arm slipped just a little bit. And when my arm slipped a little bit, it was just enough for me to go flying over the handlebars. There was rainbow and grape and cherry flying all over, sparkling in the sunlight of the summer sun. And I slammed my arm and hand down onto the concrete, and I was bleeding. I cut my hand right here, and I cut my elbow back here. I was bleeding all over the place. The moral of the story is, I'm fine now. My hand's okay. My elbow's okay. And the reason that my hand and my elbow are okay is because when you fall like that, no big deal, you just make new cells, and those cells replace themselves, and now I'm all better. And that's the whole process. And the last thing that we talked about was DNA replication and how DNA goes from one strand of DNA to 2 strands of DNA. And the reason that DNA goes from one strand to 2 strands is because I have to make a new cell to fix my hands from falling while getting Italianized. And so in order for me to make new cells, I got to copy the DNA first. So here we go. How do we get new cells? Cells are made through by existing cells, and we already knew that when we talked about the characteristics of living things. All cells come from existing cells through a process called cell division. Now, there are 2 types of cell division. In reality, there are 3 types of cell division that we're going to do in this class. One is how bacteria do it, which is called binary fission. We'll get to that in a second. We do a process called mitosis, and then we also do a process called meiosis, which is going to make things called gametes or sex cells. 2 trillion? Okay, that's how many cells are produced by the body every day. 2 trillion a day. 25 million cells every second. So the second that you're watching this video, 25 million cells are reproduced. And another 25, and another 25, and another 25. 25 million cells a second. That's crazy. That's a crazy amount of cells. Reasons for having to reproduce new cells. Cells have to be able to grow. You got to make your own body bigger. So, and for growth, I got to make new cells. To develop into what I am. I didn't always look like this. My voice didn't sound like this. When I was 9 years old, or somewhere around 7th and 8th grade, getting Italianized, some point something weird happens to you where you used to talk like this, and then all of a sudden you start doing this. Okay, development happens, and new cells have to produce from that development. I repair the cells that I fell when I fell and scraped my hands, and production of new cells in order to make new cells inside the body, which is in reality kind of like meiosis, but we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Sex cells, another word for a sex cell is gametes, and so that's what we're going to talk about. The third type of cell division, which is meiosis, in order to make our sex cells, aka gametes. Wink, wink, hint, hint. There you go. Okay, so a gamete is a reproductive cell, like our sperm. Well, my sperm. Weird. I know I just made it weird. An egg. If you're female, you have eggs. You're not chickens, but you're females. So you have eggs. They're not hard casing because they develop inside. Never mind. Okay. So binary fission is the process that bacteria go through. And bacteria go really, really quickly. They reproduce real quick because they don't care. Whatever. They can reproduce quickly into another cell. So if their cell sucks that they've just reproduced in, it's going to die. Who cares? I can make another one in a couple of minutes. So bacteria go through this process called binary fission, which is reproduction of cells really, really quickly. It's basically making identical offspring like clones. You have one bacterial cell. That bacterial splits into 2 bacterial cells. Here's a picture. Okay, you start off with one cell. The DNA copies itself through DNA replication, which is what we just talked about. DNA polymerase builds new strands. Okay, you have 2 DNA now, and those 2 DNA can then go split into 2 new cells. It's very basic, very straightforward, because they're not complex, they're simple cells. So I can go through binary fission and make that happen quickly. Eukaryotic cells, however, our cells are much more complex. And so we have a lot more DNA, and there's a lot more work that has to be done in order to produce those cells and to produce all of that DNA. Our DNA, since we have so much of it, isn't just sitting all willy-nilly inside a cell like a bacterial cell. Our DNA is arranged in things called chromosomes, which are nice organized structures that have all the DNA in it. If I need something, I know how to get to it. It's like the Dewey Decimal System of a cell. Okay, all my information is sitting there inside a chromosome, and wherever I need to get something, I just go get it because I know where it is. Okay, and these are pictures of chromosomes. You can see how in a chromosome I take my DNA, I spiral the DNA. Why is it spiral? To make it nice and compact to fit in the cells. There's the DNA gets coiled around proteins, more coiling, super coiling within the chromosome, and then there's my chromosome. Okay. I don't know how much I have to go into this right now. We'll talk about chromatids and centromeres later. Homologous chromosomes are important, though. Homologous chromosomes means you have, inside the human body, we've got 23 pair of chromosomes. I say pair because 23 come from my mom and another 23 come from my dad. They're the same exact chromosomes, they just have little tiny genetic differences in between them. So you mix the 2 of them together, one from mom, one from dad, it gives you your 23 pair. Now, if you ever decide to reproduce later, don't go on 16 and pregnant, that's bad. If you ever decide to go and reproduce, now you're going to take half of your genetic information through that process of meiosis and send that to another special someone. Cute. Okay. Haploid diploid is important, but I'm not going to worry about that today. We'll do haploid and diploid and all the rest of this stuff on this PowerPoint later, because I want to get into mitosis and meiosis. Now, with mitosis and meiosis, we're really just going to focus on mitosis today. But if I go now to 6.2, here we go. Here are the stages of mitosis. Hey, blow up. Well, doesn't matter. We have a couple of different stages. We have first what's called interphase. Interphase is the prep stage. It's separated into 3 parts. The prep stage that's separated into 3 parts are called the G1, the S, and the G2. I don't know why it's not blowing up. Oh, it did blow up. How about that? sorry about that. Where'd the picture go? Oh well, 1, 2, I should edit this, but I got time for that. G1, S, and G2, those are the 3 parts of interphase. And each one of them has an important thing to do. The G1 is called the growth phase. It's growing, the cell's getting bigger. The S is called the synthesis phase. The DNA is being copied there. That's where DNA synthesis and DNA polymerase are working. And then G2 is the final growth stage, making sure there's enough organelles and making sure everything's ready to go so that can split into 2 new cells and go into mitosis. There's the picture that I was looking for. It's a cycle. You have your G1, you have your S, you have your G2, and then it goes into the process of mitosis. Mitosis has 4 stages. There is 1, prophase. Prophase, what happens with prophase is the nucleus starts to break down. When the nucleus breaks down, it makes the chromosomes visible. Those chromosomes can then go and split. Then we enter into a stage called metaphase. Metaphase is when the chromosomes line up in the center. It's kind of like kickball, where everybody lines up in a straight line and then you pick your teams and then you kick the ball. Okay, but this is lining up in a straight line so that the cell can pick sides. One side of it is going to take a chromosome, and the other side of it's going to take a chromosome. We'll get into homologous chromosomes and how that all happens later. Next is anaphase. You'll see that the X split apart because the X is made of the same stuff, and so this side's X and that side of the X get split apart. They have the same genetic information. So what's happening here is it's pulling apart. You Twilight fans, this is what they said in that biology class. I think this stage is anaphase. What do you think? I think it's anaphase too. Team Edward. Okay, and then finally, telophase. Telophase is when the cell begins to split. Okay, you can see this occurring right here, right down the middle. This is called, hold it together please, the cleavage furrow. This cleavage, in other words, it's splitting into 2 new cells. This is what's happening. This isn't an animal cell. If this was a plant cell, if I had drawn these rectangular, this isn't a cleavage furrow. This would then be called a cell plate. But in this situation, animal cell, cleavage furrow, this is where it starts to begin to split into 2 new cells. You can see the nucleus is starting to come back. Now, I'll get into this a little bit more in detail when I come back the next day. But this here, this is cytokinesis. After mitosis is done, cytokinesis is the actual physical splitting of the cell. I think that that's good. I think that's a good place to stop, and I'll see you tomorrow.